Good evening. Welcome to Town Hall. It is Monday, April 18th, about 7 p.m. We're going to be having our second budget hearing tonight relative to the town's budget. First order of business is the pledge to the flag. Next on the agenda is a land acknowledgement statement, which I will read. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. Next on the agenda is the roll call. If you would, Susan.
Council President McEntee.
Here.
Council Vice President Collins.
Here.
Councilwoman Bergner.
Here.
Councilwoman Kelso.
Here.
Councilwoman Rose.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. Next, we have a public hearing relative to the Town Council's preliminary budget for fiscal year 22-23 as adopted on March 21, 2022. At this point, I'll turn it over to the Town Manager, Terry Murphy, for a presentation.
Good evening. As you know, this is the second of two required public hearings for the budget process. We had one on April 14th, last Thursday. This is the second public hearing as required by the town charter, and by May 1st of each year, the council must approve a budget for the following year. Just to give you a look back on the budget process, we actually started the budget process in December with the initial preliminary budget hearing with the school committee and the town council. From there, January saw the development and adoption of the capital improvement program budget, and March we began the process of work sessions to review the proposed town manager budget along with the school department's budget. And on March 21st, the council adopted a preliminary budget for FY 22-23, and we are now here at the public hearing stage. On Monday, April 25th, the council will hold a public hearing to adopt the final budget for FY 22-23. Upon adoption, there is still the ability for anyone who wishes to petition the budget to do so, and that would happen in May. Deadline is Thursday, May 12th. And in June, if there is a budget referendum, that's when that would take place. Just to take a look at the original budget as proposed by my office, it was a property tax levy proposed at $75,745,061, which reflected an increase of about $1.677 million, or 2.2% over the current fiscal year budget. That equated to a property tax rate of $11.02 per thousand. You'll note that's down from $14.45 per thousand, and that is due to the full property revaluation which took place this year. On March 21st, the town council considered the proposed budget, and at that time, the council made the decision to make further reductions to the budget, which are reflected here. As you recall, the council was presented with 5 options for reductions to the proposed budget. This particular option, which was option 3, reflects healthcare savings, reductions to the OPEB account, which is the other post-employment benefits account, It also reduced the council contingency budget. It reduced the debt service allocation by $150,000 and eliminated the cost of the mobile app by just about $5,000. And on March 21st as well, there was an increase of the outside agency funding by $9,000. That resulted in a reduction to the proposed budget of $344,171, and it reduced the overall increase to 1.79%, bringing the tax rate down to $10.97. This table reflects an overview of the Town Council's preliminary adopted budget as of March 21st. And again, you will see that it drops the net property tax level, the property tax levy to $75,396,416. And again, that reduces the tax rate to $10.97. It reflects a total monetary increase in the budget of $1,328,481. That's down from the $1.677 million that was originally proposed. That's a high-level view of the budget. The warrants that were available on the table this evening reflect all of the tables that I will be presenting tonight. Just a high-level overview of all of the funds for the town operating budget for a total of $102,352,828. You will see a number of funds besides the general fund and the school fund that reflect either enterprise funds, utility funds, and recreation services funds, Peacedale Office Building, Senior Services, the Guild, and the Rec Center, along with the debt service fund as well. To go back to the general fund expenditure statement, you will see that this slide breaks out the general fund by function and shows a total general fund budget of $29,309,829. You'll see it's broken out by general government, which is generally speaking town hall services, and then the various departments within the town, as well as capital and human services and outside agencies as well. Here is the general fund revenue statement. You'll see that the bulk of the revenue is through property taxes, along with a number of other revenue sources, including departmental fees, state aid, investment income, the school department transfer, and fund balance transfer. On the school side, the school fund expenditure statement reflects $61,731,873, and this is broken out by categories of wages, benefits, services, and commodities. So you can see how the school department expenditures are laid out. And again, the revenue statement from the school, you'll see the property tax transfer is level funded for the past, equal to the past 2 years at $55,994,773. I'll quickly run through the separate funds. Peacedale Office Building is a self-sustaining fund, primarily receiving lease revenue. Also, there's revenue related to recreation programs for a total operating expense of $90,867 and revenue at about $103,000, which reflects about a $12,000 net on the revenue side for Peacedale Office Building. There are no tax dollars associated with Peacedale Office Building. Senior Services, you'll see the total is $701,685. Again, there is a general fund transfer to support the senior program. There's also fair share fees that are contributed by the town of Narragansett, and grant revenues as well to support the operation of the Senior Center program. Neighborhood Guild is a self-sustaining fund through the endowment for the Guild and trust funds. and you'll see that the Guild has an operating budget of $714,583. The Guild primarily offers recreational programming to the community, and again, it's self-supporting between trust fund revenue and programming revenue. The Community Recreation Center has an operating budget for 22-23 at $613,447. The Rec Center also requires a fund balance contribution through the general fund, and it also is supported through revenues related to recreation programming and rentals. The Debt Service Fund, you will see, has an operating transfer of $1,661,693. That is down $150,000, reflective of the reduction that the council had made, and there is $150,000 proposed for a fund balance transfer for the debt service as well. And we have the utility funds that are operated through the Public Services Department. The Water Enterprise Fund, $1,359,033, and you'll see that the revenue for that fund is primarily usage fees, along with other rents and investment income. The Wastewater Enterprise Fund is also operated through Public Services. Again, the 23 budget reflects $4,797,388, and again, those are this fund is supported through usage fees. And the Solid Waste Enterprise Fund, the same. You'll see we are at $1,002,971 for FY23. At the March 21st Council preliminary budget adoption meeting, the Council directed me to look for other opportunities for reductions. If you note in this slide, you'll see the blue column is option 3. That is the adopted preliminary budget that reflects the reductions that were made on March 21st and adopted. Since that time, staff has gone back and reviewed budgets, gone back to look at areas in specifically commodities to try to consider other reductions. Staff submitted those reductions. Since that time, Council has been presented with a memorandum that reflects line item detail for the reductions that I just mentioned. What I show here are 4 or 5 other options that are something that the Council can consider. If we're looking at option 3A, you will notice that in the grayed out row, line item reductions with minimal impact is about $56,600. The goal here, as directed by the Council, was to try to get to $120,208, which would have been the unassigned fund balance contribution. And with that, staff reached $120,208. What I have here shows in that grayed out row minimal impact line item reductions and impact to services line item reductions, which would essentially reflect reductions that would in some way impact services by departments, whether it be through building maintenance or EMS or public services, supplies, professional services, materials, education and training, those items that would in some way result in some type of impact on services to the community. So you'll see in option 3A, I show a $56,600 reduction, which would reduce the overall tax rate by another penny, down to $10.96 per thousand. Option 4, which was originally presented on March 21st, reflects a tax rate of $10.95 per thousand with an increase of 1.63% over the current year budget. 4A reflects the combination of the minimal impact and impact to services reductions that were presented to the Council by line item, and that would also have the impact of a $10.95 per thousand tax rate. And then option 4B reflects the minimal impact line item reductions and a contribution from the unassigned fund balance of $63,608 to also get to the 1095 tax rate. Those are the options. Option 5, as I mentioned on March 21st, would have significant impact to personnel and services if you were to keep the tax rate in the budget flat for FY 22-23. And that is the presentation for this evening. That shows the high-level view of the operating budget. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Terry. Any questions by the members from the manager? School committee members, any questions? All right, at this time, we're going to open it up to the public. I just ask that you first identify yourself. We're going to try to limit you to 5 minutes just to give others an opportunity to speak as well. So with that said, first come, first serve. Come on up.
Jim O'Neill, Matunic. Before I start tonight, I wanted to thank Mr. Plata, but he's not here this evening. He said the personnel reduction, the proposed budget would be about 18.3 FTEs. That was good to hear. But I also want to thank Ms. Whitford, too. Ms. Whitford, because she mentioned something which is very true, which I forget about personally all the time, is that the issues I talk about took place between 2000 and 2012, and basically none of you were here. None of you were up there, and except for Terry out mowing lawns late in the evening. No one was here, so nothing here is personal. But I thank you for that reminder, because maybe with what I have to say, you'll understand that why I think we're continue to be in the mess that we're in. So thank you for doing that. All right, let me just sort of give my story again here. We can call it the Big Bang Theory, the Broad Rock Middle School saga. And back in the 2001-2002 fiscal year, 17% increase in the property tax rate. Normally would have been 17%. The difference was $3.25 million, if you can keep that in mind. The problem is that was not one-time help to open the school. This is in perpetuity. That $3.25 million has just grown forever. And as I told you at previous meetings, just using our property tax increases over those 22 years, that's $125 million we spent on that Broad Rock opening, which frankly, most people looking back on this said the school should never have opened because of the information we had from NESDEC, which showed us going into a free fall after 2000 with the population. With that in mind, you think the 17%, too bad it wasn't a loan, but it was in here in perpetuity. The next budget, 10.84%. The 04 budget, 8.14. 17, 10.84. 8.14. Think about these numbers. I don't care if you ran a bakery or what you did, ran a school. You cannot survive those numbers, and those all carry forward in perpetuity in our current year's budget. The public finally figured this out. They almost figured out the year of the 17% increase. I was part of a petition that wanted to reduce that $5.25 million by $1.25 million. We lost by 54 votes, 1,989 to 1,938. Whatever. I'm pretty close on that. That's how close it was. After these 3 budget increases I just told you about, we brought another petition forward. And we won it this time, dropping it by $1.25 million, and we won it by 300 plus votes, fairly handily for a school issue. So we won that petition. And that meant the 2005 year was only up 2.9%. But the public was so upset at the spending increases, they also said, we're going to close South Road School. So you had a petition that was accepted by the voters, 04, in 05, we closed South Road School. It just shows you the mismatch of the spending that was taking place. While this went on, back after the 17% budget, we had a school committee member resign. She just called it deceit and lies, and honestly, she said the town council, the voters, did not know what was going on with these budgets that were put in place by the superintendent at the time for the Broad Rock Middle School expansion. Opening. So, I can call that repugnant. I can call it whatever you want. In those 4 years, from 2002 2005, school population dropped from 4,384, and we started to breach 4,000, so down about 10%. In those 4 years, and you need to mark your calendars on this, the FTEs increased from 519, the maximum we ever had in this town, to 621.2, up 20%, an increase of 102.2 FTEs. And this is the problem that we're trying to resolve today. It has been a snail's pace of reducing the FTEs, while our student population has gone from 4,383, and it's close to 2,600 now. I use 2,700 just to be safe. But this gives you an idea. That's the mismatch here of those first 4 years. It was incredible. As you know, state law, a few years after that, in 2009, changed the levy increases to 5%. There were no more of these maximum increases of 7, 8, 10%, so on and so forth. In years after that, as you know now, we're at the 4% levy rule. What happened in 2009 was something else.
Jim, I don't mean to interrupt you. You are past the 5 minutes. If you want to just kind of conclude.
Oh, well, I'll come back for
up.
part two, but let me just finish this one
Right.
segment. In 2009, I also brought another petition for $1.25 million, and I lost it badly. My calculator told me that this was just insane, our spending on personnel, while the folks in the student population, while that drop was in free fall. So I'll come back for part two for my next 5
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.
Anyone else, feel free to just come up to the microphone.
Hi, my name's Greg Sweet. Hats off to you guys. You guys have done very, very well in the last 9 months or so. Hats off. I think you picked the best superintendent. You guys did very well there. So thank you for doing a good job. It's my understanding that there's 18 fewer FTEs.
Yes, Raquel, you can answer that.
Hi. Yes, net, there's net 18.
So none were hired back?
That's next year's budget, no? That's a net, so there was 23 that were initially laid off. Some are brought back because of the pre-K program, and some different positions are under grants, so it's a net 18.
What will the net be for next year? I mean, is it going to be less than 18, or is it?
That's the budgeted number right now. We still have a gap to close, and we're waiting for the results of redistricting.
Okay. This was astounding to me, especially having listened to people talk last week. The budget, school budget, is up, well, $3.2 million, I think. And that's the highest one since, well, starting at 2009 up to present. That's double what, or close to double of any of the other increases. I mean, why is that? 300,000, I mean, 3 million?
It's mostly due to the ESSA grants. The actual general fund with the requested increase of $500,000 is only up $328,000.
Okay. I know you guys do not have an opt-out for the school bus, and I don't know if it goes to this side or this side. I see about 50 cars every day on 108 parked, high school kids. And, you know, I see some cars have 1, 2, some even I saw 3 kids getting out. And I have to assume there's probably the same amount parked at the school. Out of, say, 100 kids, are there, did 100 parents opt their kids out of taking the bus? I'm not sure which side that goes to.
Oh, Michelle, go ahead.
Several years ago, we tried an opt-out for transportation, and once we got the data from the parents, it was not going to reduce bus runs or the number of buses that were going, because the people that were opting out were too scattered around. In addition, there were some families that were nervous about saying yes, we'd opt our kids out, because they felt if they opted their child out this month and a couple of months down the road, their job situation changed or their family situation changed, and they were no longer able to transport their child, they'd be in a bind. I don't know if Ms. Massananti, who is on the Transportation Subcommittee, might have more information than I do.
So we had the Transportation Subcommittee, excuse me, over the past, I would say there's been different versions of it over the past 10 years. And everything we look at, it never really reduces the number of buses that run because of the drivable miles across the landmass of South Kingstown. So say we have a neighborhood that's out bordering on the Exeter line. Say there are 10 kids and 9 of them opt out and you still have 1 kid, you still have to run a bus to go get that child. So it isn't always about the ridership, but there are a lot of different things that we need to look at. And I'll, you know, I know Raquel she works very closely with the transportation company, and they're, in fact, after the redistricting maps get finalized, we're always looking at transportation because it is such an exorbitant cost for us. But I will say that there were restrictions that were put in place by previous administrators where options they refused to look at. So I'm going to use my neighborhood as an example because we have about 25 kids in our neighborhood. We're about a half a mile from Curtis Corner Middle School by bike path, but we're 3 miles by bus. Well, they go by bus, but why can't my kids walk, right? Why can't that neighborhood and the other neighborhoods involved walk? Because they refuse to factor the bike path in, which from my perspective, factor the bike path in. You can walk the bike path, rain, snow, sleet. So there are different things that we need to look at, and to your point, it needs to be rehashed, and we've talked about reinstating the Transportation Subcommittee and looking at depot stops and looking at different options. But the ridership isn't like when you look at the kids who drive their cars, they still may have kids in their household who are in the lower grades. So just because a senior or junior is driving doesn't mean a 6th grader or a 5th grader doesn't need transportation from the same family. So it is a little bit more complicated than counting the cars, but it needs to be looked at.
Well, my point is, no, I don't believe, well, how many parents opted out? None?
During COVID, actually,
Well, I mean now.
well, during COVID, a lot of families opted out, myself included, and we never opted back in. So my child still doesn't have a bus seat, but the bus still comes to our neighborhood.
Even before COVID,
It was like, say, 14. Like, it was insignificant.
and there were as many
Right.
vehicles on 108, and I'm sure there were
Yeah.
as many at the high school.
Yeah.
All right. Last week you talked about maintenance of effort, and if I understood it right, if there was a bond, whatever the town would vote on, if it was voted to reduce your budget by $3 million, you said RIDE may not accept that because of payroll and benefits and things of that nature. Is that correct?
Yes, there's two parts of maintenance of effort. There's the maintenance of effort that we talk about on the revenue side, which is either the same amount that you gave the schools last year or a calculation. That's what we've been talking about with per pupil based on the drop in enrollment. I also want to point out that we've been held harmless by the state of Rhode Island for a reduction in state aid. So right now, going forward, to RIDE to even petition that may not be acceptable on the revenue side because of the held harmless. When you jump to the expenditure side, you have to meet certain requirements for maintenance of effort for expenditures. So by law, you have to fund the collective bargaining agreement. You have to fund, by federal regulations, special education. We have to fund transportation. We have to fund different things that are meeting the BEP, which is the basic education program. So we talked a little bit about last time that right now, Rhode Island Department of Education has hired consultants for the next year to really look at the link of the basic education program. But that's what we would have to do. We would have to petition RIDE, and they would come and look at our expenses to make sure that we're meeting those requirements on the expenditure side before we even talk about reductions. And again, the state of Rhode Island is holding us harmless for any reduction in enrollment on the state aid side. So this will be a difficult year to do so.
If they said, you can't do that because you have to meet your payroll and all the benefits that go along with it. If you got rid of FTEs, where I don't know, but if you got rid of FTEs, then would that satisfy their needs? Maybe.
Possibly, but we'd have to look to make sure that there aren't any restrictions in our collective bargaining agreements to do so.
Okay.
So we would have to look at both because there's a specific law that says you must fund the collective bargaining agreements. So we'd have to look at both.
Okay. And I'm not sure where this would go. This is the last one. I know it's more than 5 minutes, and thank you, but this is the last one. Compared to other comparable sized schools in Rhode Island, we have quite a few more FTEs than they do. Why?
Again, I mean, I'd have to look at the specifics of each school district. I'm not sure how many schools they have. I'm not sure what their collective bargaining agreements look like with regards to student-to-teacher ratios. I don't know the requirements of their students with regards to special education. I don't know what their programs are. So it's really hard to compare, apples to apples with schools. But I will say that, again, they're coming out with data that's going to be really helpful for us. RIDE has committed to the data's coming out, but RIDE has committed to really looking at school districts to be able to answer those questions because we are so specific. So we're hoping over the next coming months and throughout the year, because RIDE has committed to working with us for 12 months, that we'll be able to have those discussions so that we can learn from other districts as well as them learning from us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Greg.
Just a couple things. So Greg asked about the net positions. So you reduced by 24 FTEs. You brought 6 back on the grants, correct? So while this year it could be a net, there's not necessarily committed funding for those other 6 positions. I think Greg asked a little bit about that, but we didn't get to that point. So in the next year's budget, potentially those positions are not funded. Or 2 years? The 6 that you brought back?
So the 6 that we brought back were specific to pre-K, and then there are 7 under the grants, and you're correct. The grant positions will end when the ESSER funding ends. So that would be if we carried them over for the full ESSER requirements. That brings us to September 2024, and that funding would go away.
Okay. And then just to go back to Thursday, somebody here, and I can't remember if it was Greg or another resident, asked about out-of-district enrollment. Was that Jim? And so do we want to answer that proactively to talk about the out-of-district enrollment numbers and what those are?
Sure. So we looked at specifically the CTE and the vocational. Currently, we have 107 students. Our budget is projected to be 100 students, and that is really based on our discussion with the middle school principal as well as the high school principal who is here tonight. He and his staff has made a huge effort to try to retain and bring students back to the program. And the graduation, when we talked about graduating students, there are 22 students that are graduating. So out of the 22 students, looking at the 9th grade from prior years and talking to our middle school and high school principal, that's where we're budgeted right now, 100 students. State and charter schools, which is a little different. So we have currently 105. The budget is 97, and that's based on Rhode Island Department of Education. They release their projections along with the funding formula. So we use their projections for enrollment in the budget. I also want to say that part of our adoption of our budget policy includes a certain percentage put aside for tuitions. So if we were to go over in either any out-of-district tuitions, we would first go to the school committee to bring the option to use fund balance for those so we don't cut into our budget any further, nor come back to the town to ask for additional funds.
Thank you.
Thank you, Raquel. Anyone else in the public? Feel free to just come on up.
Good evening, it's Doral Beasley. So remember last week I mentioned people living on a fixed income. And the reevaluation, townwide reevaluation. So people's tax bills are going up. About two-thirds of the people in town, their taxes went up. Now, this $69 million school budget, I've been talking about this for 3 years now, and I hear what you're saying, like you're trying, you have a plan, but see, that plan is only good till November 8th, because if you guys don't get reelected, or whoever's in the air is going to go back, trying to get reelected. If you don't get reelected, other people come in and take your places, like we found out in 2018. Today's plan is tomorrow's recycle. So as much as I want to trust what we're doing is going to work, I don't. There's no guarantee, first, and secondly, there's no history that we're going to follow through and get this right. Now, Jim said, Mr. O'Neill said that the way we adjust employees to student ratio, the employee to student ratio is a snail's pace. Jim, it's not a snail's pace, okay? It's like they took the snail in and nailed it to the floor. Over the last 20 years, we've lost 40% of our students, like close to 1,800 students now, 40% of our students. But during that period of time, FTEs only came down 25%. Now, if our FTEs had mirrored the 25% or the 40%, we'd have 372 people working here right now, which is 88 people fewer than we have, 88 people, times $107,000. Now, interestingly, in September, East Greenwich, which is going to have the same amount of students in their schools as we do, they're going to have 372 people working there. Okay, over in Barrington, so their ratio is like 6.75. Barrington's ratio this year is 8.0 students per employee. If we add their ratio, we'd have 134 fewer people working here. Does that sound right to you? We have an $18 million differential between the same amount of students here in East Greenwich. And you're going to let them off the hook another year. You did it last year, you did it the year before. I have to ask this question. Now that, so the redistricting options are now down to 2 options, and those 2 options, both of them, have Peacedale in the fall with about a little less than 400 students. Now, in Peacedale, there's a small section of Peacedale on the first floor. It's all sized. The furniture, everything in there is for pre-school students. So why aren't those students going to Peacedale? Why do we have to keep this school open? Wakefield. Why does that school have to stay open? For how many students? 50? 40, 60? I don't know how many. Do we know how many pre-K students are going to be in Wakefield today? I know the kindergarten enrollment thing, the number I saw was like in 106 or something.
Doral, you are past the 5 minutes.
Okay.
Just want to wrap it up.
Good.
Go ahead.
So, Doral, we need to evaluate where we want to relocate the preschool program. However, we also need to relocate special needs programs at the same time. Therefore, our plan is to relocate the pre-K school in an extra year, giving us that time so that we don't move children more than once. We want to do the best for the students themselves. So by taking that time, we will find a place for the preschool program and our special needs programs. But we can't do this until we choose a map, we find out what the enrollment is in each school, but we will get there, I promise you. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Any other members of the public? Feel free to just come on up.
Jim O'Neill, part 2 of my Broad Rock School saga. 4 things happened in 2009-10 after being ostracized for my failure in the $1.25 million petition that failed. 4 things. 1, a negative. Dr. Hicks in 09, 10, 11, 12 promised that Curtis Corner was going to close, saving us $700,000 a year if the population kept dropping. In those 4 years, the average drop was 65 children a year. 260 kids. It's still open this day, and the chess pieces are still being moved around. On the positive side, the town council saw this problem. It was the end of the recession. Our 4 years began with a 0%. as 0%, a 0.6%, and a 0.3% for the next 4 years of budget PTT. So people were hurting, everybody was hurting, everything was almost calm in a way. But two entities supported me, actually vindicated me, even though there was no collusion on my part. And I've talked about this before, but this is the key to why we are where we are today. RIDE, 2010, we got 10.6 million. Today, we're what, in our current year, 4.8 million, roughly? Massive drop. They saw what I saw. I just own a calculator. I didn't go to your meetings. I just said something's wrong here. It was a double whammy because in that period of time, from 2010 almost to currently, the state budget for K through 12 went from 800 million to $1,250,000. We didn't get a penny of that, and our taxpayers coughed up a lot of that money. If you even took our population of 2.8% of the states, that's a number of million. So RIDE hurt us both ways. They took, it really took. So it was incredible. But the other thing which you're forgetting about is Treasurer 2B Raimondo. You're all forgetting about that. She says the same thing I do. It's about arithmetic, proficiency in arithmetic. And she won big, and there was a lot of heartache, but the numbers never lie. As she said, your pensions, your employment, everything was at risk if we continued, spending $200 and $300 and $400 million per year outflow from the inflow. You can't run a system that way. So education-wise, we were blasted, both from, having to contribute. Teachers had to give up COLAs, time, lengthening the salary time for working, so on and so forth. But think of those two situations that happened. Massive changes in the state. And Jim saw it. And the voters who work with me saw it. Every bit of it. Matter of fact, I was slightly conservative with it. And I had written about the pension issues from 2000 yearly. People just got sick of me just showing numbers time and time again. Anyway, move on quickly here. Don't want to run out of time. I'll have to be back for a third time here. But it really got to the point of Armageddon. This is how we were thinking. And it was really quite sobering. It's just incredible when you think about it. That double hit by RIDE. And that's why I keep pleading with someone who can really analyze the residential values of the towns that I've mentioned, the Westerlies, the Barringtons, the North Kingstown, Newports. I think we have a strong case to get $2 or $3 million back per year. I really do. It just doesn't make any sense otherwise. But in 2009-10, headlines on editorial pages, Broad Rock, nothing but a lie. Broad Rock, a white elephant. We never had to open that school. And the cost to us, whether it's at $3.25 million over 22 years times all our property tax rate increases, whether it's chance with Dr. Hicks to save us $10 million by closing Curtis Corner. We have never taken the step, the full step, to really look at this situation and say, we've really got to catch up and balance. I don't want us to go to zero to 320 of our employees, which I brought up last time, which is the equivalent of the 519 that we had in the year 2000. You can do the math. I know how to cross multiply. I'm not looking for 320 employees, but we need to get down to 400 before history has a chance to repeat itself. And this is how close we are. I don't know what's going to happen with the economy, with schools. Pension, we're still unfunded state-wise for teachers and state employees under 60%. This is really borderline. We're all on edge here. All of us, schools, labor, everything. We got a problem. And all I want you folks to do is acknowledge that this has created the mess here. This has created why we're looking for petitions to reduce the amount of money that we spend, because on the other side, if we start getting population back, or if things get worse in the housing market, we are really going to suffer, and you've got to think big about that. And I know in the papers, I'm going to leave on this note, in the papers the last few weeks, I know Superintendent Cummings over in Narragansett was talking how proud he was about his 50% budget thing, but they've got transportation in-house, so it's not real. But he had South Kingstown at 70% when we're 73.84% with the current budget and planned. So I'll come back a third time, but on questions, on the two questions I posed the last time. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Everyone else? Oh, feel free to just come up to the microphone. Just ask that you identify yourself, and we'll try to limit you to 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Vera Levitt, and I'm here just to represent parents of this town, and I really appreciate you working on the budget. It's really hard to keep track of all the changes and all the development in the schools, but I would like to talk about redistricting. I've been muted during the school committee meetings, and we also requested, as a group of parents of Wakefield Elementary School, we requested a public hearing. I understand the school committee talked about it and decided to ignore us. So we never got a real public hearing that would explain why this town, why on earth this town wants to close the school that is in the heart of it. I would really like to say that it's quite hurtful. It's hurtful for not only parents, children, teachers, but the community, and ask every environmentally friendly person. Ask any person who thinks about town, who thinks about walkability, who thinks about biking. There's, I see there are meetings about biking and how healthy it is, and all we do is cut the budget or try to cut the budget and say, like, we need to save money. What we want to do to these teachers after 2 years of pandemic is to celebrate them, not to cut these jobs. They do wonderful, wonderful job. We need children in this town to go to public school. I'm very proud to be part of the parents that do have children in public school system. I begged my husband to move to New Bedford when I got the job there. He said, we are not leaving. I want our kids to go to public school in South Kingstown. It's the best public school system ever. Ever since I started to learn about this issue, I've been more and more depressed. You talk about, psychological effects of pandemic. You talk about children. This is affecting every family in Wakefield, but not only Wakefield. The process of redistricting is really tough on not only kids, but parents, on teachers. There's very much nervousness in the town about this. Talk to any business, talk to any parent, talk to people that are also your voters. They are not happy. I went to focus groups that were looking for the new superintendent. Overall consensus among all the parents from every elementary school was that there is something very wrong going on. With the school committee, there's no trust. And when I traced the problems, they seem to lead to town hall, and I would really like you to see what you can do about this situation. What can we do together to come together as a community and change this tax saving, things that keep rolling down the hill, killing people on the way, or at least making them very uncomfortable, making them leave the district, making them look up for another private schools. It's not good. It's not good for anybody in here, in this town. You should talk to people that are younger, that are not only looking for tax saving, that are lower than 65. They're not men. Talk to people, talk to constituents, and see what they have to say. We were not able to talk to the school committee, or if we talk, we have 3 minutes, we get cut off, and the next person goes, and over and over and over again. It doesn't seem that there's any listening going on. There's just talking back and forth to us, which is not really how democracy works. I'm from Eastern Europe. I grew up in communist regime, and what this school committee had to say to me is what I learned as a child. And it's not pretty. That's why I think this town can do better. This town can be amazing. That's why I live here. That's why I moved to town. And I really ask you to think what you can do to help our children. Really think about them and not about anybody else. What can you do? Can you help? How can you help my twins to really stay where they are in small community where they walk to school for 2 minutes instead of sitting on the bus for an hour? Is this really better for the children? Is this better if you fire their teacher? No, I don't think so. Please consider it, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
Kate, can I ask you a question about, because you're on transportation, how far is Peacedale Elementary School from Wakefield School, and is there a way to walk safely and so we can do that?
Most of the kids in town, if you can walk to Wakefield, like if you're in this area here, you can walk to Peacedale. It's less than a mile as far as I'm aware. Wakefield's there, Peacedale's there. There's a bike path that you can walk. You just go up 2 blocks. Even if you're coming from the hospital, instead of walking across the bridge, you go up 2 blocks. And there's a bike path. Many families from Wakefield actually go to Peacedale for DLI, and that's how they walk.
And so would it be fair to say, I don't go to a lot of the in the weeds meetings, would it be fair to say that walkability is a value of the school committee and that preserving that ability is held in high regard?
I would say that it's accurate.
And then just another question, because I think we talked about it at our March meeting, about the capacities of all of the buildings. I don't know if I heard this correctly at some point. Even when we redistrict, our schools will not be much over 60%. Okay.
Yeah, Carol can answer that one.
Yes. That 68% is next year. We are bringing back the 5th graders as well, so those capacity numbers will go up. So we have to keep that in mind. The other thing is, it's not true capacity. We are constrained by gymnasium space and other constraints. For instance, Matunic may have 18 classrooms. We can only use 15 of them because of the gym constraints we have. So, and when we bring back the 5th graders, we will be using 15 classrooms. Wakefield only has 12 classrooms. So we can't redistrict at this time and use Wakefield as one of the 3 schools. And it breaks my heart because my kids went to Wakefield. It's strictly a number and capacity in classrooms. The only way you could use Wakefield is if you did art on a cart, had PT on the stage, which they have done in the past, and it's not good for students. Yes, Peacedale is walkable for many of these neighborhoods. My neighborhood, that my kids went to Wakefield, we're off of Allen's Ave. We won't walk anyway. We can't walk to Wakefield, Peacedale. So, not every child in Wakefield is able to walk currently. So we looked at all of these issues. It really came down to a data-driven decision.
Thank you. Mike, go ahead.
If I can add to that also. What Carol's talking about is the numbers for next year, and you're right about the percentage. After next year, however, the numbers will eventually start coming down according to the projections we've got from NESDEC. In addition to having lost 20% of our school population in the last 10 years, we're looking at between 15 and 20, depending on which projection you use, another 15 to 20 loss in the next 10 years. And I don't have a whole lot of data on this, but there was one thing today that came across my desk. I think those numbers underestimate the loss that we're going to have. I don't know that anybody has been able to yet take into account the effect of COVID and the economy. One example, the thing that came across my desk today was when we did the McKibben study back in 2015, one of their assumptions was that mortgage rates stay below 5%, and that was included in the projection. Well, we're now up at 5% for mortgage rates. If they continue to go up, that means his numbers are actually going to be low. So we may be looking at more than 20% in the next 10 years. That's going to reduce the capacity further for the buildings that we are using, even taking into account closing Wakefield and Curtis Corner.
Thank you, Mike. We'll allow you to come up and speak again, but we'll just open it up to others first. Anyone else in here who'd like to come up and speak for the first time or a second time?
Sorry, thank you. So we have this like $18 million differential between us and East Greenwich every year. $4 million of that is for the amount of money that we send out of district for students that are going to other high schools or charter schools. And the rest of it's compensation. Now, in September, and we're looking at the East Greenwich, Barrington's, and our 2022-23 budgets. In September, Barrington and East Greenwich are both going to be paying $18,000 per student. We're going to be about $27,500. But we don't have five-star schools. We have one four-star school. Now, in 2018 and 2019, the first two years of the RICAST assessment testing, the only thing that stopped South Kingstown from being number 2 in the state behind East Greenwich, Barrington was the high one year, and East Greenwich was the high the second year. I can't remember which was which, but they were the top two. The only thing that was keeping South Kingstown's schools being rated number 2 in the state was our students, how our students did on the assessment test. That was it. But we'll be spending $27,500 this fall versus $18,000. But we don't have any five-star schools. We have one four-star school. And the number one criteria that they look at when they do the school star ratings is how our students did on those tests. Now, NEA, or NEARI, when you look at their website and you go in there and see what they stand for, they don't think assessment testing has any value. They also don't like their teachers to be evaluated. Makes you wonder why. Now, if we're going to continue to pay all these people all this money, besides our salary scale in South Kingstown for our teachers, our salary scale is almost mirrors exactly Barrington. But remember I said that Barrington has 8 students for every employee, whereas here we have 5.7 students per employee. That's 134 employee difference. That's how their budget is $18,000 a student, and ours is $27,500. They also have maybe $200,000 go out of the district to other school districts where we have $4 million. Now, in East Greenwich, they have about the same amount. They have 372 people working there. But the difference is their salary scale at their top step is $10,000 per person lower than ours. our top step is like 99 something. On step 10, the highest number was like 99,000. Theirs is 90. Across the board at the top step, and we have 87% of our teachers here in this town are top step. This is for the building committee that you're going to create, the new one. Having been a person that's went to so many of those building committee meetings from the prior attempt. This is one thing you cannot this time handcuff the building committee and say to them that how much we're going to have to pay, how much we're going to have to find the money to fix our schools or maybe to build a new high school. That it's not the purview of the building committee. I heard that every time I brought up how much money it was going to be and where it was going to come from at those meetings, I was told by the chairperson and the vice chair, it's not the purview of this committee and the town manager. It has to be. First of all, on that past committee, you had two town council members on it and 2 members of the school committee. Now, Jade's estimate to fix our schools came in at $179 million.
Doral, you are past the 5 minutes.
Okay, just give me 1 second to finish that up. Well, last week I said it was about $198 million, so what I came up with if you want to build a new high school. The thing is, to be able to do that, we have to get $6 million off of this school budget, because we can't take that $6 million and throw it on the backs of the taxpayers. We have this $15 million of excess compensation. I call it excess because I don't see where it's done us any good. We have that $6 million. That $6 million has got to come out of that, but it has to come out over the next 3 to 4 years, because if the building committee is successful and the bond referendum passes, you need that $6 million available right at that moment.
Thank you.
Doral, I think last Thursday, Superintendent Pallotta said that when they redistrict, there may be additional positions that they can lay off, right? It was mentioned last week that they don't know how efficient they could become. I mean, we all know that some of the elementary classrooms have 9 students in them this year. You know, there's two classrooms side by side of 9 kids. It doesn't, logically makes no sense. So there should be some efficiencies hopefully coming. So I don't believe it will, 18 is the number that will net out of that, which might help work at it. Correct? Did I say something incorrectly? No? Okay. He had said it last week and he's not here to repeat it.
Hi, Valerie Spiritolozzi. I just wanted to add a little bit of information, particularly regarding some of the issues of school closure. Given the low percentages of capacity that are existing in all the buildings, I am glad that the school committee has worked on a plan to redistrict and close some of the extra buildings. And it is difficult to choose which buildings to close, and no matter which building was chosen, there are people who will be affected, obviously. I had done an analysis of the transportation issue, though, which I had shared with the school committee several months back, and regardless of which building for elementaries was chosen to be closed, if you went with just existing bus routes, it would add an average of 8.9 minutes for any one of the existing bus routes, and that assumes no further redistricting, which obviously they've engaged a consultant to help work on, and no further optimization of transportation, which the committee does, and Raquel works with the transportation groups. The school district always works with the transportation provider to re-optimize the routes each year. And in addition, there are only 2 bus routes currently that have a time that is over 1 hour on the school bus out of all the buses. And those happen to be one at Peacedale and one for West Kingston, actually, which is probably more of a nature of where those neighborhoods are physically relative to any of the schools. The average time on the bus is 38 minutes. So if you added 8 or 9 minutes to that, you're still at about 45. The lowest bus route is 22 minutes. So, I do think a lot of students will still choose to walk if they're close enough to Peacedale, and many parents choose to drive their children anyways. It would help if we could develop a better opt-out system that perhaps allowed some flexibility for families when circumstances change. But I do think that the school committee has worked hard this year, and Dr. Pallotta, formed 4 subcommittees to look at very important issues, including strategic planning, redistricting, and looking towards a future building plan so that the schools can be improved, because we really do need facility improvements long term. So thank you guys for working collaboratively on these budgets. It's hard work. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Paula, go ahead.
I'd like to think that with the new the redistricting plan that we have in place, or is going to be in place in the transportation issue, and having programs spread across our 3 schools, if we're able to come up with a good program, will kind of decrease that 1 hour bus time on those 2 buses, because those children will be able to go to the school that's in their hometown versus coming from, say, Matunic into Whiteville for DLI, right? So when I think about the transportation issue, that's what I think about. I'm thinking about if we're redistricting, taking a school offline, we're evening out our 3 schools that we have, we're putting the program across the district, then it can eliminate that time on the bus for our students. And I'm hopeful that that's what's going to happen. I just wanted to say that just to try and ease some minds, but I'm hopeful that's what's going to happen. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Anyone else in the audience like to speak for the first or second time? Come on up.
Vera Levitt again. I'd like to talk to the time, like for us, we moved to Wakefield because of the school. We specifically moved when the kids were 2 or 3, so we can walk to school. If you have 5-year-old or 6-year-old, you can't walk from Wakefield to Peacedale. I'm sorry. Like, it's a nice idea, but it's not going to happen. It's just, it's too far. And, that this town always rallies when the Wakefield school is going to be on the chopping block. It's happened 13 years ago, it happened 3 years ago. Why do you think that is? Because there's a community, because people that live here very much appreciate the walkability and appreciate having the school as a part of this fabric. Like, it's not about us being crazy hippies that want to go to Brickley's after school. It's us wanting to make this town special, and making this town really appreciate its history, seeing the cemetery, seeing the ducks in the river, seeing the herring run, all that stuff that's special for here. I'm European. I know how school, church, pub, all those things create town. If you cut it off, you are going to have black hole, and what's going to be there? Like, who knows what's going to be there? Who knows, like, is it going to be condo for summer people? I never heard that. Like, what is it going to be? I see South School Road closed, sitting there empty. It's not what I want our town to look like. You also talked about school buildings, and I know you said it's not about buildings, but it is for us because we are community. It's a small school. Send my twins to big school with 500 other people. It's not what we sign up for. It's a small community. Every teacher from every level know my kids, and they know by their names. It's a family, and if you take it, it's not doing anything special to these kids. Also, Wakefield is the healthiest school, and if you talk to people that actually occupy these schools, you would learn that. Only it was neglected, it wasn't maintained, but West Kingston and Matunuck has issue with mice and squirrels. Peasdale has black mold on the first floor every time after it rains. There it is. So there are issues that I feel like nobody listened to parents. Nobody really talked to people using those buildings, and I feel like there's such a huge opportunity. You like to talk about declining number of students, but what are we doing to attract them? We could have schools, looking at those turtles. We could use the opportunities, learn about the memorial that's there. We could really do something special in here. I talked to admission person at Compass School. They have 1,200 people applying for 20 positions. Why is it there? Why don't we have those people here? And if you talk about declining enrollment, people are going to leave. They see what's happening. They talk to each other. Mothers talk to each other at breastfeeding groups. They don't want the kids here because all they see is budget cuts and budget cuts. Where is the vision? Where is the visionary leadership that would say, we are going to make this town fabulous, we are going to make this school great, and turn it around. Also, there are few more, maybe 2 more classrooms in West Kingston and Matunuck, but they are triangular. You can use them. Also, as I've learned in the redistricting subcommittee that happened on Friday at 5, because those subcommittee meetings would happen at 4 p.m. on Thursday or Friday when all the parents work. I had to take a day off, went there, and I learned from the committee members that were saying, we have to close Wakefield because the gym is too small, and they have a member who is a phys ed teacher saying, that's not true. And I talked to people around, and they're actually saying that West Kingston and Matunuck has together as much space as Wakefield. So the more I learn about, the more surprised I am that I don't see those reasons. Also, the library is much better in Wakefield. As it's not like people are passing through in and out. It's very disruptive for classrooms in those 2 other schools. I'm not saying it has to be done differently, but I'm saying people didn't have a chance to discuss it. And when we requested the public hearing, we didn't get a chance to do it. So there is something going on, and it's upsetting. And I want you as town council member really do something about it and really start listening to your people here, because we are eager to talk to somebody, but nobody's listening.
Thank you. Anyone else in the audience like to speak for the first time or second time? Going no? All right, Jim, we're going to cap you at 3. If anyone likes to speak for a third time, that's where we're going to cap you off. So, Jim, go ahead.
3. All right, well, I'll start by thanking all of you for your budget work. I spent 14 years doing this, so I know the time it takes, so most appreciative. Just a response to some things you've heard tonight. There isn't one of us here, whether you sit up here in the audience or at home, who doesn't want the money to be there for the best schools that we can have. But if we don't manage it right, we're going to come up short, and that's the problem. The 60% capacity, you understand that. We do need a new high school. That's going to cost a lot of money. If we can tell the people that we've managed our affairs and budgets right, they'll pass it. That's what you want. But then on the other side, you open the paper, and it looks like General Assembly may give Providence the go-ahead for a $525 million pension budget. They're currently 25% funded. Is that going to be backed by the state to make sure they can keep a AA rating? Instead of last year at 2.5% for maybe 20-year bonds, maybe it'll be 5 or 6% now. You don't know. There's so many so many questions out there. But this is why we have to be careful. This is why we have to manage the budget, which is going to zero me into the issue on services. Services number was up $1.4 million in your proposed budget. And at the last meeting, you told me operating costs increased for about $400,000. That leaves $1 million. We learned tonight maybe 10 fewer kids times 19,000. Maybe we're saving 200,000. So my question is, on that $1 million, where is it being spent? I can't find it between professional services, property services, other services, supplies and equipment, and the salaries, if you will. The money follows the student. I can't find what that other $1 million is.
So the grouping that you're talking about is the grouping within the town's budget. So it's grouped a little differently. So I want to first start by saying that with the increase of $500,000, the general fund is only a $328,000 increase. When that cut happens, we're actually less than last year's budget. So when you're talking about the increases, you're looking at the majority of services as a whole. Now you're looking at the flexibility between line items. So you have transportation that's going up. You have out-of-district tuitions that are going up. And the other biggest thing is our contracted services that have to do with the increase in the maintenance of effort for Article 9 for facilities. And then you have various other line items. So if you look at the school department's budget it's on board docs and it's also on the website, we break down every single line item. We're mandated to do it by the Uniform Chart of Accounts. The town's mandated to do it a little differently because they're grouping their services differently. So when you're looking at that line item, it's a little different than what you're seeing in the budget, so it is confusing. Another thing you're looking at is the grouping of, in the Uniform Chart of Accounts, we're grouping utilities within supplies. So obviously that wouldn't make sense when you're looking at it from a town-wide perspective, so that's adjusted out. So there's a lot of different variations. It might be easier to look at the school department's budget from year to year. It kind of breaks it down.
Okay, well, you absolutely lost me. You know, I'm looking at past budgets where this breakdown: professional services, property services, other commodities, supplies, equipment. I just can't find the $1 million. Is this in lieu of not having a property tax hike?
No.
I don't understand how you're mixing up line items, the 5,000 series, what it is, 5,100.
You're looking at like two different things. You're looking at the town's grouping, which kind of aligns with all their departments, versus comparing school to school, which is aligned with the Uniform Chart of Accounts. So if you're looking at the school department's budget, which groups it consistently from year to year to year, you would see that it's less than $1 million. So if you're looking at other purchased services, the total from year to year would be about $700,000. The majority of that is about $500,000 for transportation, and the remaining is special education tuitions. If you're looking at property services, the increase from year to year is 78. And if you're looking at professional technical, it's actually 40,000 less. So you're looking at there's a different variation you're looking at. You're looking at a budget within the town versus looking at schools, which is grouped differently. I mean, that's what it is. Again, the entire general fund budget is only increased by $328,000 total, and that's with the $500,000 increase that we're asking for, which is level funded in the town's budget. So we're actually less total than we were from last year.
All right. Well, it's just what we, produce for the public, what we see here under the school fund expenditure statement. It just has services. There are commodities underneath it, but under services, $1.4 million increase this year. This year over last year was $1.4 million. And those had large increases through last year with out-of-district tuitions. Now we're losing about 10. So it sounds like a $200,000 saving there. Anyway, I can't fight tonight over this because I do not understand it, but it just looks as though we are mixing up where these expenses belong from the old days of the, 5100 series, whatever it is. I cannot follow this, which is driving me absolutely insane, so my apologies. All right, we'll go from there. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Jim.
We'll hopefully see you at the next council meeting. Thank you.
All right, anyone else in the audience like to speak?
Hi, Greg Sweet. The elderly get a tax break based on their income. I forgot to bring the sheets with me, but the low end was in the like 20,000 range, something like that. That is not high enough. That should be bumped up quite a bit. Well, I don't know how many people can live on.
So, Greg, there will be a public hearing at the next meeting relative to amendments to that plan, which will increase the levels relative to that.
Bring this up the next time?
Yeah, you could bring it up then if you'd like. We have a public hearing at the next regularly scheduled town council meeting to take that up.
So not tonight?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Greg. Anyone else in the audience like to speak, either for the first, second, or third time? All right, Doral, this is your third time. We're going to cap you at this one.
Mr. Mayor, on your comment earlier about the projection enrollment to continue to drop another 20% over the next, say, decade, that's why I was pushing the redistricting committee to consider bringing the sixth grade back to elementary schools also, because that would fill your buildings in 2 years up to 90 to 95%, and including Wakefield, because Wakefield would be a pre-K to 4 school, and the other ones would be K to 6. So I think, for me, the biggest equity issue that the school district has is in this document right here, and this document is the teacher's contract. So I printed out the contract about a year ago. Printed it out one night, and it pulled out a highlighter, and when I was going to read through the contract, and whenever I came across a section or a paragraph or whatever that was that I considered and that would be benefit of students, I would highlight it. I never took the cap off the highlighter. In the entire 60-some page document, the highlighter, there's not a highlighted line in this entire thing. We have this contract here that you guys are going to be about ready to start negotiating the next one, because this one ends in 2022. So, but it handcuffs you so badly that I don't see where we're going to get to where we really want to go, is to have the best of the best in our classrooms, the teachers. Now, the group that came in 2018, they changed the PAT policy, so it went back to seniority is the number one thing for layoffs, seniority. Well-run organizations don't handcuff themselves like that. Just because somebody's been working in a district for 25, 30 plus years, that doesn't mean they can still do what they did 25 or 30 years ago. You need to have ways in this document to get rid of people that are not doing the job. But at the other side, on the salary side, year after year, it's 2%, 2%, 2%, 2%. But we don't have 5-star schools, and our kids are And our kids, the decline in their math scores from 2019 to 2021 in this district was higher than the city of Providence. So here's the old petition thing here, right? I don't know what I'm going to do between now and when those have to be. I don't know right now. I used to write. I haven't written a letter to the papers in over a year. Just when I had my heart attack. For me, writing letters is like pulling teeth, because it drives me insane to write a letter, because I get so wrapped up in it. And finally, the whole reason I got into this, the only reason, was in 2017, my two grandsons were in the 3rd and 5th grades, and I figured that if I got involved with this thing in the building committee and everything, that both of my grandsons would have an opportunity to go to a new high school or a reconditioned high school in town. Well, since it crashed and burned, attempt 1, we've lost the 2 to 3% interest rates on bonds. Those are gone. We lost lower construction costs and materials. They're gone. I'm almost done. And my oldest of my two grandkids, he'll never set foot into a high school. And if I'm lucky, if my other grandson's really lucky, he might have 2 years in that school, but it looks like it's more like 1. We have to do better in this town.
Thank you, Doral. Go ahead, Paula.
So I'm gonna talk a little bit about coming here as a school board member. When I first decided I was gonna run to be on the school committee, I asked what my role was, and it was explained to me that I was going to be representing students, families, and the community. That being said, I think that me and my colleagues have been working really hard at doing that. However, we came in with a permanent superintendent that soon turned into an interim superintendent, and now we'll be working with another permanent superintendent soon. And in this time, we have got a lot of stuff done. However, it's going to take time for us to be able to get the budget where people think that it should be, because that superintendent makes recommendations from working with his administrator, which is the principals of the school and his central administrative staff, to figure out how to save on the budget, figure out how to reconfigure schools, figure out what schools can be redistricted and taken offline and all of that. Dr. Pallotta has done a very great job getting us to where we're at today. However, he's an intern. He's been retired, and so there was only so much that he was able to do with us. However, Mr. Prince now will be coming on, and he'll be able to pick up where Dr. Pallotta left off at. And I heard it said in this room something about evaluations, evaluating teachers. It's not that we don't like to evaluate teachers. To us, it's unfair to evaluate teachers when you've had so many shifts in the leadership, and those people don't know the person that they're supposed to evaluate. So hopefully when we get Mr. Prince here on board with us and we start working with them and we've gone through a year, we can do those evaluations, and then we can start to figure out the budget where things are just dropping off. Because the superintendent is the person that helps the principals and the administrative staff figure that out. The school board isn't the person to figure that out. We're here for the recommendations. We agree with the recommendations, what we think are best for the students and for the town. And you know what? Some of the decisions are hard, and sometimes they might not be the right decision, but we're doing the best we can. And I just wanted to put that out there because we all been here a little over a year, and we're on our third superintendent. So, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Anyone else in the audience like to speak? All right, come on up. Third time, we're going to cap you at this last one here. Please limit it to 5 minutes if you could.
Thank you, Paula. I appreciate that you were talking about things taking time, because we are not against, I'm talking for a group of parents, we are not against redistricting, but we think it's very rushed and sloppy. And you had hired these smart consultants, Studio Jade and FGO, and they are having all these ideas, but that was done after you decided to close the school, not before. And that was decided during the peak of the pandemic, holiday season, nobody was paying attention. Why was it happening that way? Why wouldn't we just take time? That's all we are asking. Take time, do it well. Do it. We don't know what's happening with DLI. I don't know what's happening. Maybe you made your mind, but I read all the, minutes. I can't see it there. So we don't know what's happening with DLI. We don't know how is it going to work with all the busing. We don't know how you can redistrict without DLI component, how you can redistrict without ever asking FGO consultant that you are paying all this money for. How would you redistrict if you just look at the map and see where the kids are? You never asked that question. That question wasn't asked. We were not allowed to ask that question. So it's rushed, it's sloppy, it's nervous, and who is going to pay for doing that? I would like to ask a question because it's a budget hearing. Do we know how much are we saving closing Wakefield School? And do we know how much money is it going to cost to bus our children from Wakefield? And can we compare those two figures? Thank you so much. I don't think that information is available yet. They'll be getting that information around April 26th from the consultant's final fiscal impact statements. But how can we decide closing the school if we don't have this information? Like, wouldn't you want to have the data first and then make a decision? No.
Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
So, budget, yeah.
But this is a budget question.
So,
our legal counsel is not present currently. Their legal counsel is not present currently. Questions related to specifics of the school budget will be directed at them. If they don't like to answer at this time, we can't answer on their behalf.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak for the first, second, or third time? Laurel? All right.
So, can I ask a question about the municipal budget?
Yeah, go ahead, Deb.
So, changing topics, two things. There are 2 police officers in the municipal budget that we are funding, but they are grant funded, they're federally funded. My question is, what happens, how do we build in for that cost going forward? And because obviously there's no increase right now, but when that grant runs out in 2 years, that's going to be a cost that we need to take into account?
That's correct. There's a 2-year grant funding proposed through the rescue plan dollars, and that would then, based on assessment of the program and the scope of the officers' roles in terms of mental health and community resources, that would have to be taken into account and rolled into the public safety budget. That's correct.
Or not?
Or not.
And then we would eliminate 2 positions?
Well, the idea is to eliminate. The idea is to establish this program as an ongoing community resource program going forward.
So what would that be? What's the cost of 2 police officers 2 or 3 years out?
I'm going to guess $300,000, $150 per chief.
Chief Bucco?
Good evening, Chief Alfred Bucco, Interim Chief. To answer your question, Councilwoman Bergner, as it stands right now, the budget proposal includes a cost of $160,000 fiscal year 23 for those 2 officers. Again, it's tough to throw a dart on this 2 years later based on, inflation and things of that nature. We're looking at $407,000 for 2 officers. This is equivalent to the salary and benefit costs for about 2 full years. Year 3 will be partially funded. Year 4 will be integrated in the police budget. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. So is it $407,000 in 3 years we're going to be paying?
For two officers, ma'am.
That's a 2-year funding.
Thank you. Thank you. There was a lot there. Okay. Sure.
Do you know that if in that budget for the 2 resource officers, there's professional development included?
Yes, there is.
Okay, thank you.
So I have another question about the memo. Oh, no, not for the police. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
New topic. Thank you for the memo that we got in the last 5-year transfers and reserve fund things, but could you explain it a little for the community to understand? They don't even have the document, but if you could explain that, the last 5 years, the transfers and the reserve fund surplus?
Sure. So at the end of every fiscal year, the finance director projects a surplus on the operating side of the budget. At that time, the finance director presents to the town council recommendations for how the year-end surplus would be moved to either capital expenditures, projects, and also the debt service. The debt service piece of the year-end transfer is budgeted. It's really those projects that are recommended that may be in capital, the capital program that either need to be require more funding or are sped up in terms of what the need is for those projects. So at the end of each year, there's a recommendation made to council. Council reviews the recommendation and the associated projects that are being recommended for funding and makes a decision as to whether those funds be transferred into reserve funds that carry over, that it doesn't fall back into the unassigned fund balance. So if you look at the memorandum that I have for the council that was put together, you'll see that there's a 5-year balance. For example, in 2016, a total of $1.1 million approximately was transferred. That was an operating transfer of $677,000, and there's memos associated with those that indicate the specific projects and why those funds are being moved forward. So it's a projection in terms of what the surplus will be at the end, and then it's essentially split, not evenly, but whatever the debt service is and those remaining funds into projects, equipment, and capital reserve funds.
What are you anticipating this year?
So let me just...
Because I'm interested in knowing what the surplus is, because I think that I'd like to use as much of the surplus back to the community as possible.
I don't have that in front of me, Councilwoman. I'm sorry. I'll have to get back to you on what that surplus is projected at.
And the final thing, can I go one more time? So historically, the relationship between the school committee and the town council had some sort of a handshake agreement. I don't really remember, and I don't know, I'm calling on the only person who might be here, is when the school committee realized a surplus fund, it wasn't that they were going to go out and re-spend it. We could have some conversation about the money, if you realize from redistricting and closing a school, whatever that fund is, that money is, we could have an agreement that said that's for the school facility repairs, debt service project, and not to be put into operating. Could we do something like that? I don't know. There's been this talk of this agreement that other councils and school committees had. Everyone's looking at me like, oh, maybe Michelle remembers. No?
Terry or Raquel, do you have any familiarity with discussions revolving this?
I have only been here 18 months, so I can't talk about that. But I can say that we've adopted a policy, and it speaks to that. Any surplus that we have would be brought forth in front of the school committee to be assigned for one-time expenditures specific to facilities projects. I think going forward, what we've done in the past 2 years is fund capital solely with use of fund balance. Looking into future years, that's something that we would do. So the timing is right when we begin the budget that we'll have that audited figure. So it's very public. It's based on a policy. And you never want to put it in an operational budget because it creates a structural deficit.
So I would like to just comment. I can't see Raquel, which is very awkward. But I would like to state that under Ms. Pellerin's direction, the budget subcommittee undertook creating, well, actually, Ms. Pellerin created and we read and approved a budget policy, which we had a budget policy that dated back 1972, so more than 15 years ago. And it had never been revised or revisited or implemented, to my knowledge, and I'm the one sitting here that's been on the school committee the longest. And Ms. Pellerin helped our budget subcommittee work our way through this new, very robust budget policy to which she just referred.
Thank you, Michelle. Terry, did you have some thoughts?
I want to be honest. I am not familiar with how the school department's unassigned fund balance can be carried forward, and so I can certainly go back and request some advisory on that to provide some history if you'd like.
Because people have said that there was some sort of a conversation. Yeah.
So I'm not sure personally with what the history is, and we've learned a lot about history tonight. But what I would like to suggest is that we use the policy that we've just put into place that is very robust. It went from being, I believe, 3 paragraphs to multiple pages following Rhode Island general law, updated Rhode Island general law, and it is very specific how we can spend our money, what happens if there's a surplus. It's a very robust law, so maybe policy. So maybe we can share that with the town, and everybody has it. And it is public; it's on board docs. But of course, it's just as easy to send a link. So I think we should go forward following policy.
Thank you. Michelle, did you have something there? No? Okay. Deb?
I just want to mention that we have a very good bond rating here, and tapping undesignated fund balances for operating costs will jeopardize that. We've worked very hard here to get the rating we have, and it does put us in a good position going forward as far as facilities, the money we need. So I can't remember off the top of my head what we have used as a percentage of operating expenses to keep in that undesignated fund balance, but I think we're 12 to 16, somewhere in there. We were a little high this year. We've used it. I would caution any more depletion of that undesignated fund balance because I think it will jeopardize our facilities' future.
Thank you, Deb. Any other thoughts from the members up here? All right, school committee members, Mike Marin.
Just a couple of things to reiterate, because he's not here tonight, what Dr. Pallotta said on Thursday. The preliminary budget that the council passed, level funding, is a clear message, and I'm sure I can speak for my colleague on this. Like Dr. Pallotta said, we'll deal with that challenge. It will come in level funded. That's what we will spend. One of the other things, without belaboring the comments that were made tonight, but one of the things that was said Thursday with respect to the ultimatum that was presented to the council, there was a lot in there, but just briefly, you were told that we can build a $200 million brand new high school, get 55% reimbursement from the state, and simultaneously bring up all of the test scores of the students in the town just from doing that, apparently. That's wrong on several levels. Number one, and I don't think I'm going out on a huge limb here, I don't think there's a political will in this town to build a brand new $200 million high school. You probably know by now the school committee sent a resolution to the town council last week asking it to reform the town school building committee. That's going to be work between the council and the school committee on an ongoing basis, and that certainly can be one of the subjects, is what do you do with the balance. Plus, in the next 2 years, we're going to be turning over to the town 2 buildings. That disposition is going to be up to the council. What happens with the funds from that and the savings from that can also be a subject of conversation. Second, related to Councilwoman Kelso's comment, the notion that we're automatically going to get a 55% reimbursement from the state on whatever we decide to build right now is not accurate. The state legislation that offered 55% reimbursement maximum expires for anything that begins construction after December of 22. There's a bill in the legislature to extend it another year. We hope that that passes, but it's simply not true that you can spend it and you will get 55%. That's something that the town council and the school committee are going to have to take into account together. The other thing, with respect to the personal disparaging remarks that were made, the council appointed me to the school committee 8 months ago. I didn't know any of these women when I was appointed. I have to tell you, they put in a ridiculous amount of time for the kids in this town. I have come to admire every single one sitting at this table. It was just inappropriate and not productive.
Thank you, Mike. Any other comments from members up here or any of the school committee members? Kate?
I want to follow up with along the same lines that Mike just finished with as far as our all of our schools. So we have a lot of phenomenal teachers in our schools. We have a lot of phenomenal students and families. And no matter what school a child goes to in this district, the teacher will know their name. The administration will know their name. We have an administration member in our audience right now who I can guarantee he has about 900 kids in his building. He knows their names. He knows who they are. Both my children went to Peacedale. There were 450 kids. Still to this day, my daughter was the class of 2020. Her kindergarten teacher asks me about her. The children will be fine where they go. I just want to make that very clear, because I know teachers and families watch these meetings, and I know that teachers and administrators take what's said at this microphone to heart. And I just want to make sure they hear me when I say I see you, and I think that it makes me sad when I hear that, because I understand where the sentiment is coming from. We like our home schools, but no matter where our home school is, the kids will be fine.
Thank you, Kate. Any other thoughts from school committee members? One last time, council members? All right, that's going to bring us to the end. I'll just say one quick thing. I think it's important that the town move forward with unity, and I'd like to discourage any attempt to bring a petition forward. I think we have some great things on the horizon here. We have our new town manager, Jim Manny, in the audience. The school committee has just hired a new superintendent, and from the perspective of most of us, we're all making great progress here, including the decisions the school committee has made. So an attempt to keep things strong moving forward and get away from the past clashes that we've seen, I would discourage any attempt to bring a petition forward, but that is up to you as you please. But thank you again for everyone in attendance tonight, and we'll be voting to enact the budget on Monday, April 25th, so we'll see you then, and have a good week. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Do we need a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion to adjourn.
I hear a motion, a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes.
Motion to adjourn. Yep. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I hear a motion, a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes.